I have all this adrenaline going and I missed the bell and I was like, oh, shucks. Okay. But what it did for me was it was that action that cures fear. Like I had climbed up the pole, I had taken that action, I had done it. And so a couple months later, you and I, David, we went to another one of these type places that had the same kind of pole, different company, different part of town. And I looked at that pole and I was like, I can do that. I am going to ring that bell. I am going to get up there. I climbed that pole in record time, half the time of what I'd done before. I got up on the platform. I got out my stick and I didn't close my eyes that time. And I rang the bell. And that's the thing is something like that looks absolutely terrifying before you do it, or even when you're in the middle of doing it. But once you've taken that action, it wasn't a big deal for me to do it the second time around.
Did I go first on that before you did?
I believe so. Your action didn't cure my fear.
Well, I was going to say that the first time I ever did that, because when I was with you, I had already done that before, but I went with a friend of mine and I looked at that thing from the bottom and I was like, hell no. I was one of those people. No way. And I've got a friend of mine and he was the kind of guy who was basically up for everything. So he was like, yeah, I'll do it. So once he did it, I saw that it was possible. And I said, if my friend can do it, why not me? I think that's a great lesson. And we've talked about that on previous podcasts as well. You called it a mental mentor, thinking about people who would do that and then thinking about what would they do. So sometimes it's great to have a friend or that support network that can help you think big. That's the value of a mastermind, which Napoleon Hill talks about in Think and Grow Rich. You want to surround yourself with like-minded people, and those people will pull you up.
And most of the time, people metaphorically just stand at the bottom of the pole and look up the pole and remain scared and remain fearful. And that's not going to cure anything. I mean, you can say, oh, well, it's just fear. It's just trying to keep me safe. It's just neurons firing in my brain. None of that's going to cure it. The only thing that's going to cure that fear is to climb the pole. And that's obviously a metaphor for your life and the action you need to take in your life and your business.
Something that people are very surprised about, but you've experienced this with me personally. When I've got to give a speech, I get really, really nervous. A lot of people don't know. Well, a lot of people don't know that I'm an introvert. They hear me on the radio or on a podcast or see me speaking publicly. That, oh, you're an extrovert. Because I'm good with crowds, good with people.
And you're chatty.
Very. I'm a Southerner.
Yep.
But with that said, I'm really an introvert. I prefer to be alone. And you'll hear me sometimes like choking and kind of coughing. Like my throat gets caught up and I've got to just remember to breathe. I feel like I'm going to throw up. And that happens not every time before I'm speaking, but frequently, more often than not. But what I've found when we talk about action curing fear is the moment I step out on that stage, everything is fine. And I'll think back and I'll be in the middle of it. I was like, wow, this is great. I'm actually enjoying it. And I can enjoy it now more because I've done it so much, which is also action curing fear. But just simply getting out there, it's usually not as bad as we work it up to be. But even now, I get nervous before I go out. And I just have to think ahead and think, well, what is it like once I'm out there? But you're not going to know if you haven't been out there the first time. So get out there.
Action cures fear. Well, another thing from the book that struck me, because this is something I've been practicing for the last few years in my life, especially since I became a coach years ago, was David Schwartz says, big people monopolize the listening, small people monopolize the talking. And I love that. And as a coach, that was something that I learned how to do, was allow people to talk and be the listener, because people love to talk. And when you're the listener, you have the ability to gather information, to hear other points of view, to really grow as a person by listening and, again, taking on information. And when you're talking, you can't do that. You're just trying to get someone to see your point of view. So that was something really interesting in the book to me.
That's why I liked you so much. I remember going on our first date.
Oh.
I'm going to
tell
let
us.
you tell this.
Oh, you want me to tell
Because you let me. I didn't even realize that I was doing this.
You were hilarious on our first date. You kept asking me questions about me because you were very curious about me because you didn't know me and you're interested. And but then you kept talking. And so you would ask a question and then maybe answer your own question or keep talking or something because you were really excited. But I don't think you're a small person. You just like to talk.
I monopolize this podcast sometimes.
Maybe you were nervous.
I was extremely nervous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what about this other big one that he talks about? He says, don't wait until conditions are perfect. Whenever I hear this, because you hear that said in a variety of ways, I always think about, I think it's on the History Channel. There was a show, and it was like a reality show. I think it was called The Most Dangerous Job or something, where these guys were like deep sea fishermen. Or they would go out in Alaska, and there's always a storm. And those guys don't wait till the weather is perfect. If there's a storm coming in, they need those fish, they go out there. And that's why it's the most dangerous job. But that's the big idea from the magic of thinking big. Don't wait until conditions are perfect.
And Schwartz gives the example of driving from Chicago to LA. And he says, if you keep waiting for conditions to be perfect to make that drive, for the weather to be perfect, for all the drunk drivers to get off the road, for the traffic to be clear, you're never going to start. You're never going to get in your car and start. So he says, solve future obstacles and difficulties as they arise. Don't worry about them in advance. The conditions are never going to be perfect. You just have to get in the car and start driving.
And you also can't worry about them because a lot of the things we worry about don't ever show up anyway.
Yeah, there's that quote, and I've talked about this on my podcast. It goes something like, if you see 10 problems coming down the road, if you wait long enough, 9 of them will pass you by. And that's the thing, is the things that we worry about and we put all our mental energy into fretting about, most of the time just pass you by and never come into fruition. So that's really what he's saying here, is don't worry about all that stuff unless it actually comes up and you're dealing with it in the present moment.
In this book, The Magic of Thinking Big, David Schwartz, it's full of great ideas. We're going to cover one more, and that's what we call stickability. I think about stickability like a pit bull. You know, pit bull, when it clamps its jaws down on something, like the jaw, I guess it hinges or unhinges, it basically doesn't let up.
Ow.
Yeah. So a pit bull has good stickability. That's one of the reasons it's a dangerous, dangerous dog. And I'm sure we're going to get emails about people like, oh, we love pit bulls. Yeah, they're all great, but this is a fact about its jaw. And
well, there's a shark that does that too.
Sharks, yeah, a lot of animals do that. And we do that too when it comes to taking on a new project. We have a very, very aggressive schedule for recording Red Podcast and promoting it. It's a brand new podcast. We're doing a lot of behind the scenes work on it, and we're sticking with it. Sometimes it's tough. Sometimes we have those things come up that we didn't expect, and we've got to work around those, navigate those. But we made the commitment to stick with it, and that's part of the magic of thinking big. And if you want big results, you've got to stick with something. You can't just turn around and give up on it.
I like that. Well, David Schwartz's book, the tagline is Acquire the Secrets of Success, Achieve Everything You've Always Wanted. And he really does talk about a lot of the strategies that anyone can use in your business. And if you have a job, a career, anything like that, it really does help you take your life to the next level.
It's a fantastic book. We've got the links to it in the show notes at redpodcast.com/21. Of course, you can get the free audiobook with an Audible trial at receivethebook.com. It's a great audiobook. I've actually got that. As I mentioned earlier, I like to listen to these books in the car, in the gym. It's really helped me with my delivery for this podcast and public speaking. So if you're a fan of listening, or if you've got a commute and you want to make the most of it, receivethebook.com. You can get that book for free with an Audible trial. Laurel, we have some great stuff because we are just launching, and that is at redpodcast.com. We're giving away all sorts of stuff in the upcoming month. We have Amazon TVs,
iPod Nanos,
iPods, we've got Kindles, We've got Blinkist subscriptions, and I think Magic of Thinking Big, they might actually have a summary on there. So if you don't want to read the whole book, they've got a great summary. We're giving away those. We should give away some copies of Magic of Thinking Big. We like it so much.
Absolutely. Well, this is all to launch our podcast on iTunes officially. So that's all coming up pretty soon, July 7th.
So go to redpodcast.com for that. You'll see all sorts of buttons about our giveaway for this upcoming month. 30 days of red hot giveaways, redpodcast.com. You can also get in touch with me or Laurel. We're happy to answer any questions, and we may do it on an upcoming episode. Laurel, thank you. See you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.